Let the scariness begin.
G'day guys, Clayton here from Workbench Hobbies in Eindhoven, the Netherlands, here for Scale Model Challenge. But before we get in there, I want to start with a little story. This year my wife, Karen, and I decided this year would be the year of yes, whether that be to go and see a play or read a book, or as it turns out, an overseas trip to Europe. The opportunity came up, so we jumped on it. Interestingly, when we checked the dates for this proposed European trip, my wife, Karen, says to me,
"We can't go.
You've got a model show booked for that time." Now, as it turns out, I made a diary entry in our diary, our shared diary, 2 years before, saying that this Scale Model Challenge was the one I wanted to come to. And as luck would have it, we've given it to the universe, and here we are, Eindhoven Scale Model Challenge. Let's go.
I'll start off by correcting myself in that the show is held in Veldhoven rather than Eindhoven, which is just on the outskirts of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Now, Eindhoven is about an hour and a half on a train from Amsterdam, and Veldhoven is about 15 minutes in a car ride from Eindhoven. Upon arrival, I could tell I'd walked into something very different, with hordes of people and rooms packed with club displays, product demonstrations, and various vendors spruiking their wares. It was a feast for the senses, and quite frankly, I didn't know where to start. The lineup for the registration to drop off the competition models was at least 20 metres long and 6 people wide in parts, and was snaking through the halls, which was an early indication as to the level of enthusiasm around being part of this event. With so many models on display, it would be impossible to share them all, so I've done my best to capture the entries that caught my eye. Now, I've also broken this video up into genres rather than into categories to better help with the flow of the video. Whilst automotive modelling isn't really my thing, I can appreciate the time and effort that goes into producing some of these masterpieces. The category was quite light on, but represented nonetheless. Trying to display these gallery pictures broken into categories and skill levels, say, was going to be impossible just by the way the event flowed and my ability to take and collect the information around the entries. For instance, as you can see, if it had a vehicle on it and it was on a diorama base, I've called it an automotive model, although the lines can be quite blurred at times as to what model should fit into what category, addressing it in this way. Now, I've time-stamped the video, so feel free to slide the time bar to the subjects that interest you the most, but I'll be sharing my thoughts and some details around the show as we go, so make sure you don't skip too far ahead. It's probably a bit of a stretch to call these earth-moving examples all automotive models, as the weathering and finishing tends to lend itself more to the armour-based set of skills. The nautical entries were again another category I felt was perhaps a little underrepresented for a show of this size. However, the standard was really good. In saying that, modelling ships is one of the areas in the hobby I am least qualified to provide any assessment of. Now, as much as I would have liked to have credited every modeler again, it was impossible to do so. So if you see your own work or somebody's that you know, please feel free to call it out in the comments down below. Creating seascapes is a discipline all to itself, and there were some incredible examples for all to see. One of the most incredible pieces in the room was not actually part of the competition, but I wanted to share it with you with the other nautical themed models. The attention to detail and the minute scale was something to behold, and looking at it on screen just didn't do it justice. And speaking of unqualified, let's have a look at some of the figures. Now, whilst SMC isn't a figure painting show as such, you could certainly make an argument for it being one of the big draw cards on the figure painters schedule. Here, the best is competing against the best across every conceivable genre of figure modelling. If you can't find something here you like, you simply aren't trying hard enough. I can't seem to put my finger on exactly what it is though, but there is an unmistakable European style across a lot of these figures. The brief seems to be all about pushing the envelope and expanding the palette from light to dark and experimenting with lighting effects and tonal graduations. Some of the blending and interpretation was absolutely mind-blowing. Even if figure painting really isn't your thing, it's impossible to not feel some sense of awe here. The fantasy and sci-fi figures are always fun because of the possibilities they bring, and different interpretations of the same sculpt completely change the outcome and the effect they have on the viewer. But of course, there was a huge display of historical figures as well, where the colour requirements are a little more traditional. This show has many categories represented across two main skill sets. There's standard and masters, with the idea being if you were to win a gold in standard, you should then move up to the masters category next time, although you don't require a medal to enter the masters category as I understand it. Now, I'd encourage you to take a look at everything here, simply because there can be so much joy and inspiration found in all of these models and figures, no matter what your key interests are. I have to confess, I had my eye on a couple of fantasy figures to make the trip home with me, but I had to prioritise the armour related goodies due to a lack of baggage space. Like I said, it's impossible not to get caught up in the energy and dynamic that some of these sculpts and paint jobs inspire. One of the standalone categories was all about the sculpting of the pieces, and honestly, these people are on a different planet to me, and I'm so pleased their skills are recognised with its own category. And just as the sculpting had its own category, there was a special category here for scratch building and conversion of kits. There were some really interesting subjects here represented on the table, and I think recognising this skill within the hobby is a really great accolade to these people who invest their souls into converting some of these things. The works were really impressive. I make no apologies for the fact that I'm obsessed with armour modelling, and I am pleased to say there were so many incredible pieces on display across multiple categories. All scales, subjects and conflicts were on the table. It was fun picking out all of the models I've been seeing getting posted online over the last 12 months and seeing just how amazing some of them really are. The 16th scale stuff always draws a crowd given the level of detail, with Spud Murphy's M113 one of the big draw cards of the crowd. Now, I have a soft spot for 72nd scale armour as well, and I'm pleased to say there was a lot of it on display, and it was for the most part of a very high standard. And although not technically dioramas, these little displays being posed with figures really elevate that scale to something extra special. As armour modelers, we have totally been living our best lives of late, with the quality and range of 72nd scale figures and subjects reaching new levels. These incredible little figures really do make the small scale an attractive alternative to some of those larger scales. It's also worth mentioning that not all of the models that you see in this display were from the competition, and it's possible that they were part of some club displays during the event. So what would I do differently if I came again? Well, firstly, I wish I had bought something to put on the table. Having skin in the game, so to speak, is always fun, if for nothing other than contributing to the success of a show like this. Unfortunately, our travel plans weren't conducive to carrying a model across Europe and then getting it on the table in one piece, but next time I would plan my movements a little differently. But probably the one recommendation I would make would be to try and book the hotel early. The conference centre has around 500 rooms, but it fills up really quickly. So if you want to be in and amongst it, staying there is the place to be. Most of the social aspect of the show takes place after dark, and going backwards and forwards to the centre on the outskirts of town did become a bit of a challenge as our hotel was in Eindhoven. It was not the end of the world, but it was certainly something to consider for next time. It comes as no surprise to me that the Armour category was bursting at the seams, and with so many high-class builds on the table, again I'll leave you to just enjoy some of this showcase in peace.
Here we are, day 2. Today I'm going to drag my poor wife Karen with me. I think she's going to find it a little bit overwhelming. So many people, so many rooms, so many things to see. But today I'm going to spend some money and I'm going to try and pick up some of the things I didn't see yesterday, because literally there were so many people. You could see about 5 meters of the models. Then you'd have to go around the speed bump of people and then pick it up again. So there was so much I didn't see yesterday. My feet were killing. I was so tired. I came and hit the bed. I didn't go out last night, unfortunately. Hit the bed at 8 o'clock and yeah, the eyes just never opened again. So let's go, day 2.
I think that's enough complaining.
Sci-Fi, Mecha and Gundam did make a brief showing on the table here, but this arm of the hobby hasn't really managed to stick in Europe as it has throughout the Asian countries. Some really lovely pieces and examples of creativity nonetheless, with the Star Wars and the MAK stuff always drawing a crowd. This was one of the biggest differences I noticed from my visit to Japan earlier in the year, and if you haven't seen that video, I'd urge you to check it out, because these are two very different experiences. The Japanese show is very heavily weighted to Gundam and automotive subjects, and not so much figure painting, whereas this one is quite the opposite. Each show was amazing in different ways, and gave me an interesting insight into how this hobby is practiced and celebrated in different parts of the world. Aircraft spanned along the length of a long table, and as expected, the standard was of course very high. The large-scale Harrier was near on impossible to miss, as were some of the intricately detailed biplanes. There were a few familiar models I recall seeing from the Shizuoka show earlier in the year. It was like catching up with old friends. Every scale across every time period made an appearance, and it was great to see helicopters well represented on the table as well. The huge sky crane was really a sight to behold and one of my favourite pieces on the table. The thought of that super detailing reminded me of just how grateful I was to be an Armour modeler. The standout piece of the show, though, was the Derelict Zero, beautifully presented on that unique display base, and this went on to win Best in Show.
Derelict!
So what is Scale Model Challenge? Well, it's one of, if not the premier scale modelling event in the world, attracting people from all over the globe to test their skills against some of the best modelling talent around. The show was established in 2007, and Scale Model Challenge, or SMC, is run by the Scale Model Factory Club based in Eindhoven, or at least that's what my friend Google is telling me. From the best info I could gather, this show saw over 800 contestants from 43 countries placing models on the competition tables, with around 2,400 models on display. This year's show ran over the October weekend of the 18th and 19th, with the annual event usually taking place around a similar time. Entry to the show cost me around 35 Australian dollars for what it's worth for the 2 days of entry, which I think was money pretty well spent. Now let me apologise if your model slipped through the cracks and hasn't made an appearance in this slideshow. With so many models on the table and so many people in the room, it became very difficult to keep track and document this whole experience. And trying to photograph some of the pieces over other models required its own skill set. If you were there, I know you know what I mean. There was always so much happening, and it was happening all at once. Again, feel free to join in the conversation down below if you see your model or a model you recognise, and give yourself or the builder a shout out. I'd love to hear from you. Judging for the competition is by invitation, which ensures the quality of the modelers and the painters judging the works of the participants. This year there were 61 judges who came from all over the planet to be part of this event. And to further add credibility to the judges' credentials, there are display cabinets showcasing their own works. Seeing those recognisable pieces by some of the world's best modelers was honestly such a pleasure and one of the highlights of the show for me. And although not on the judging team, it was nice to see one of Night Shift's works in the flesh on the Dynamo Models table. This really is a who's who of the modelling community, and to be asked to judge at a show like this is recognition for all that these modelers have achieved over their lifetime. I'd love to be calling them all out by name, but I'm sure a lot of you would already be familiar with some of these works. One of the traditions that is becoming part of the modelling landscape across the world is the giving of awards and recognition outside of the organised competition. Clubs as well as individuals, some going to great expense, create awards and tokens to show their appreciation for a piece. This is something really satisfying, being recognised by your peers, and this is a practice I really love. These medals and cards started popping up on the tables as the show progressed. I'd mentioned the club displays earlier and they were peppered through the venue. However, from what I understand, a lot of the club displays had to make way due to the huge demand from the vendors. To say I was like a kid in a candy shop really doesn't cut it. This was all my Christmases come at once, with absolutely everything you could ever want or need in the hobby under the one roof. Kits, figures, diorama accessories, scenery, reference books, as well as paints, tools and aftermarket. If you couldn't find it here, it wasn't worth having. In terms of pricing, it was pretty much on par with what I'd pay in Australia, but what was exciting for me was having direct access to some of the brands I struggle to access at home. No doubt you'll see me using most of what I picked up at the show in upcoming videos. It was just about impossible to resist the stuff RT Diorama had on offer, so I made the decision to help them finance their next Ferrari purchase.
My Ferrari! I had to do awful things to pay for her.
It was amazing to see some of the Dynamo Models figures and kits in the flesh as well. I've called them out in the videos a few times, and I'll be taking a deep dive into some of their stuff in an upcoming video. Paid workshops were also available across the weekend in rooms that fanned off hallways of the venue, and live demonstrations were taking place right across the whole room. There was so much to see and learn by just being in this space. I mentioned the style around the painting of the figures, and that was something that carried across to the dioramas and the figure sets within them. The painting, posing and the finishing of the figures in particular was a humbling reminder of just how far I've got to go with my own modelling journey. These displays were not just about placing a beautifully finished tank on a base, say. That would never be enough. These dioramas were all about using the figures to draw your focus and tell the story, with the vehicle almost becoming a secondary element in a lot of cases in the display. The groundwork, vegetation and terrain in the way it was displayed was a thing of beauty. Drama created through dips in elevation, as well as some of the most stunning architectural work I've ever seen, all working together to showcase the modeller's work. Creating dioramas and settings like these really is the pinnacle of the hobby, as it requires so many skills to execute them well. Being a good modeler isn't enough. You have to understand scale and composition and find a story within those elements. A diorama is about the story and everything else is secondary. One of my personal favourites and a highly awarded piece was The Plague. Of course, the skills and the execution of the modeler have to be top notch, but pieces like this are more about the emotion and the feeling that they can invoke. Another really lovely subject was the piece called Round Trip. Set on a rotating turntable, the piece shows the soldiers heading off to war in a slightly jovial way. And as the train spins, you start to see the damage on the carriage and the injured soldiers heading back from the front. Significantly down on numbers, it was a truly powerful piece and one that really stood out to me. But it's really not fair to be calling out favourites, because the general standard across the board was so high and so inspirational, no matter if it was displayed as a standard entry or as a master's effort. As I meandered through the tables, one of the things I like to do is reverse engineer the works and try and get my head around workflow and the techniques that the modeler has used. But looking at these dioramas, I found myself just getting lost in the display and simply enjoying it for what it was rather than trying to pick it apart. I can only begin to imagine the time and the effort that's been invested into some of these displays, and congratulate these competitors for the motivation and the discipline they must have had to see some of these projects through. There was so much to appreciate about the diorama category, and I took so much inspiration away from them. I'll let you enjoy this slideshow and I'll be back in a minute. So the way the competition works is it's run as an open system, and what that means is you're essentially competing against yourself. Gold, silver and bronze medals are awarded for the models who have earned the accolade, and the models that have come close could pick up recognition for a highly commended effort. The judging took place on the Saturday, and every model that received a place had a small sticker noting that they were medal winners. However, which medal they actually won was announced at the awards ceremony at the end of the Sunday. I like the suspense that builds, and as you can see from the crowd in the auditorium, they seem to think so too. Without doubt, the thing that makes these events so special is the friends and connections you make along the way. Like-minded artists from across the globe whose works border on legendary within this community, all united in the love of the greatest hobby in the world. If you want to test yourself, Scale Model Challenge is the place to do it. But if you just want to immerse yourself and participate for the joy of participation, connection with like-minded people, and go home with more than you came, then this event will embrace you too. For me, it's now just a question of when rather than if. So with any luck, I'll get to cross paths with you in the halls of Veldhoven very soon. So did my diary entry from 2 years ago have anything to do with me being at the show? Maybe yes, maybe no, but why not make that entry in your own diary and give it to the universe? You just never know.
Well, that's the show over and done with. I've dragged my wife around all day. She's done very well, and we're going home with a lot more bags than we came with. So that's got to be a good thing, right? Met heaps of nice people. The standard of the show was exceptionally high. Lots of little nooks and crannies and things to explore. 2 questions that you might want to ask me. How did it compare with Shizuoka that we went to earlier this year? And second, would I come back? Well, how did it compare? I found the flow of the people and the traffic was completely different here than it was in Japan. In Japan, it was just like this sea of people that moved through the aisles, and you had to jump in the water and literally just go with the flow. With here, it was a little bit different. People were going different directions, stopping, starting. So from that point of view, the flow of the traffic probably didn't flow as well. In terms of standard, it was equally as good. There were some incredible pieces here, completely different styles, which is something that caught me out and I wasn't expecting. But hopefully I've spoken into that through the video. Would I come back? Absolutely. It's just a 24-hour flight, which makes things a little bit tricky for us, but fingers crossed, we'll see you next year.
How can I go back?